Where did you get the title? The world is waiting for you. Embrace your calling and manifest the God dream of your life.
Well, I've always been inspired by your quote that God can dream a bigger dream for you than you can dream for yourself. And one of the things that's happened in my life a lot is receiving prophecies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I received these prophecies first as a young person at 16 years old that I didn't fully understand, and then from strangers, and they would lay out exactly what was about to happen in my life next. And I started realizing that, oh, this is higher than my vision. This is higher than my dream, that I'm a part of a larger God dream. And I believe that that's really that visceral, divine calling, that divine story that was written over your life before you were ever born.
So people were coming. You do such a beautiful job of relating your story in your book and relating your story and how your story relates to all of our stories and being able to see God's dream for us. Now, what's really interesting, you were just talking just before we started that Reverend Winfrey Phipps used to be your pastor. You know, I met Winfrey when I was in Baltimore and was very, very young and trying to figure out what I was doing in my life. And I was at one of those programs that people have. And he came up to me backstage and he said, "May I speak to you for a moment?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "God has impressed me to tell you that you have been chosen to speak to millions of people around the world." Now, I'm in Baltimore working as a young reporter, making $22,000 a year. And I said to him then, I said, "In Baltimore?" And he said, "God didn't tell me where it was, but God has impressed me to tell you that that is what's going to happen in your life." And I held on to that. And when I got the call to come to Chicago, I was like, well, not millions of people, but all right, I'm going to follow this dream. So how has that prophecy manifested in your life? The prophecies manifested. But that's a big one.
Shaking.
Isn't that a big one?
I mean, that's a big one. And something similar happened to me, actually multiple times, but there was one church service I went to in Memphis, Tennessee. I had never been to Tennessee in my life. And I was invited to this church service, and they said, it's going to be a prophetic revival. And I said, okay.
A prophetic revival.
That's right. Uh-huh. And there was a prophet, Todd Hall, that he was invited in. And he came and he started prophesying to everybody all over the building. And then he stopped speaking and he started writing these notes. And all of a sudden, he came down all the way from the pulpit and put them in my hand. And when I opened them up, it talked about real estate I was going to own. It talked about doing movies and television in California, New York, Georgia, the Caribbean island. He spoke about all these things. And then as he walked back up, he said, "Oh, and by the way, you're about to know Oprah Winfrey."
No.
And then he started talking about my mom. Within 7 days, I was at a dinner with you. On the 8th day, I was at a brunch with you. And 2 months later, I had received the offer to film in Georgia on the Oprah Winfrey Network, exactly how he said. So I do believe that when you are called and when you are chosen, God has already mapped out the way. It's really about us discovering and partnering with him to manifest it. And sometimes it's greater than what we think.
Yeah, well, I learned that, thank you for the shout out in the book. I learned that in so many ways, but particularly in Color Purple, when I had the dream of being just, can I be the water girl? Can I be the script girl? Can I be the whatever? And then am given the opportunity to actually be in the movie. And then everything that followed from that. And then I get to live in this space that I obviously paid for, but it is the doing of the Lord. I do know that it is the doing of the Lord.
The fact that you named this the Promised Land. And I have my favorite scripture, Joshua 1:3, wheresoever the sole of your foot shall tread, I will give unto you. And I know that this property is not a mistake. You treaded on some places. You believed some things. And this came into manifestation.
And it came into manifestation. You are a big manifester. Did you manifest working with Shonda Rhimes?
So,
in the
April 1st,
yes,
2022, I'm thinking, what should I post for April Fool's Day?
Yeah.
And something just said, why not Photoshop yourself on the cover of a Shondaland poster? I'm like, oh, that's kind of hilarious. So I had someone Photoshop me on the cover of a Shondaland poster, and I announced my new role. Well, everyone just started congratulating me. And I'm thinking, oh, this is hilarious. But it was something about their pure faith that just knew, oh, this is happening. Congratulations. Look at God. This is amazing. You deserve it. And their faith, I just took it in and wondered, could something this big actually happen? Well, a few months later, I was sent the script for The Residents, a new Shondaland production. And by the following April Fools, I was on set with Shondaland filming The Residents.
Oh, my goodness. And those of you who've watched The Residents, you know she portrays Sheila, a White House butler who is a little bit messy.
Just a little.
A little bit, maybe a little bit on the side, taking a few sips.
Just a few sips.
You are so great and so fun to watch.
Thank you.
I can see you really inhabit her, and that what did you do to get to that character?
You know, I mean, she's an alcoholic, and I felt I wanted to honor, right? It's a comedy, right?
Yes.
But I felt like it was also important to honor her life. And so I started going to AA meetings. I started really discovering what that journey is. I was watching documentaries. I also was going to UCB, taking improv. And then I was just doing a lot of script analysis and a lot of research. My grandmother worked in the White House. So there was something that also was a full circle manifestation with that, because our home growing up was filled with pictures of my grandparents with the presidents and all kinds of trinkets and memorials from the White House. So this was all very full circle, and getting into character for Sheila was a lot of work, but also a lot of fun.
Well, you deserve it, and you worked it. Hello? You worked, Miss Sheila. Let's talk about chapter 5. It's called The Secret Power of Hearing God's Voice. I think people think that, you know, you're going to hear God's voice like Moses in the burning bush, or you're going to hear, you know, the Sermon on the Mount. But you and I know, obviously, that it doesn't work that way. How would you describe how God speaks to you and how others can begin to hear it in their own way?
Yeah. You know, there are a lot of different ways that God can speak, right? God can speak through literal dreams while you're sleeping and give you these deep impressions that you're not sure, even when you wake up, what was that? Was that meant for something important? Am I supposed to do something? Through signs and wonders, right? Like with me, that's how I ended up in Hollywood. My camera actually took a picture by itself. And the sign said, "From Harlem to Hollywood, you're a star. Congratulations." Well, I was living in New York at the time, and I'm looking at this sign, and I'm thinking, how did this even happen? Well, within 1 year's time, I was cast in a show in Hollywood, ended up living with the Viola Davis. You know,
Who does the introduction? He does the forward, yes.
But God used a literal sign to get my attention.